If you own a condo in Toronto right now, you're probably feeling very trapped. You can't sell it without a loss. You can't rent it without bleeding each month. And you can't keep it comfortably either. And most owners don't realize how bad it actually is. In this video, I'm going to show you what the November 2025 market stats are and explain to you why condo sellers are stuck. Right? And we're going to break it down by size. So you see how many units are actually sitting and how many, the little number it is, are actually selling. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you the exact pricing strategy that's going to work to sell in this oversupplied market. Because if you price it exactly like how all the other condo sellers are pricing, your listing becomes invisible. So when I say that you're trapped, I'm going to explain to you what I mean by trapped. If you bought a condo 5 years or less, you're probably going to be selling at a loss. And you probably can't even sell right now because you're competing with hundreds and hundreds of condos exactly like yours. We know that prices haven't increased enough to offset like the land transfer tax, all the other costs to buying and selling. And renting doesn't solve that issue either because rent prices right now are making most condo investments having a negative cash flow. And after you pay the mortgage payments, condo fees, property taxes, and all the little small costs to keeping a investment condo, you're going to be subsidizing the tenant's rent each month. And holding gets much harder these days. As mortgage renewals are usually higher, condo fees keep on going up along with property taxes, and some condo development complexes are getting hit with special assessments, which doesn't help with the case. But if you own your condo for 7+ years, you usually have a little bit more options. You build a little more equity. You might have not bought during the height of that market. So usually you're in a different boat. But trying to sell, you probably have the same issue as all the other condo owners. And that's why this conversation matters a lot. And here's the mistake that most condo sellers make. They think they're really competing for other buyers. They're competing to attract buyers. In reality, they're competing with other sellers. And just see how many similar units there are compared to yours in size. And you understand why pricing based on comparables in your building doesn't work. Stay with me, because this is where most sellers get it wrong in this market. And this is TRREB's data from November 2025. And I want you to focus on not just price, but absorption. This is when we're talking about how much supply is compared to how many sales are happening, because that is way more important. Another term for that is months of inventory. Because in markets like this, price doesn't move the market, supply does. And oversupply destroys every seller's leverage. I'm going to guarantee you, buyers don't shop the way sellers think they do. They don't carefully compare one condo to the next. That's not how they search. They filter. They filter by price, then size. Then they stop scrolling. And anything that doesn't stand out simply doesn't get seen. And this is why some sellers feel ignored in this market. And it's not personal. It's math. And once we go through the numbers by size, when we're looking at each condo size, it's going to click. So let's start with the bachelor units. These are the smaller units in Toronto. Anything under 500 square feet. We go from zero doesn't exist, 0 to 499 square feet. In November, there were 358 units listed that were currently on the market. Only 44 sold. That's 8 months of inventory. Anything above 6 months, it's extreme buyer's market. Buyers have total control in this market. But what does this tell us? One thing, there's way more sellers than buyers. That's one. And buyers probably feel it. And when they feel it, they behave in a certain way. Majority of the buyers in this market are investors because they were the cheapest units in all the buildings and they were first to rent out back in the day. And in this size category, they're very price sensitive. They're not emotionally attached at all. They're looking at numbers that make sense as an investor. And when these buyers don't see what they're looking for, they wait. They don't rush. And this category, this size category, is where the sellers feel the most frustration because there's some activity, but there's not a lot. So this is what usually happens. Listings get viewed online, showings happen, and then nothing happens after that. No offer, nothing. And even though the size category is slow, it's not the most dangerous one. That surprise is coming. The next size category you look at is 500 to 599 square feet. And this is one of the most common sizes in Toronto. In November, there were 753 units in this category listed on the market. Of those units, only 122 of them sold. And that puts us at 6 months of inventory. And this is where the sellers start making the emotional decisions, because this size seems like a flexible size that has lots of options. It's livable. It feels livable. It feels marketable because, you actually live in this unit. But that's exactly the problem. And when something is common, it means buyers have option. And when they have options, there's no FOMO. They don't rush. They compare, they wait, and they 100% negotiate. And in this size category, sellers rely too much on the building comparables. They're looking at the exact same units or trying to find the price per square foot in that building and apply it to theirs. That's totally wrong. That's not how you sell in this market, because buyers are not comparing your unit to the one that sold a few months ago. They're actually comparing yours to all the other units in the neighborhood around the same price and same size. And this is just the beginning of the trap. So in this next size category, it's the most crowded. It says 600 to 699 square foot condos. In November, there's 926 units listed, almost 1,000. And of those, 167 of them sold. Month of inventory is better than the other ones, but it's still over 5 months of inventory. Still clearly buyer's market. And this is where listings disappear. And it's not because their units are bad. It's because buyers are overwhelmed. There's too much choices. And when buyers see too many choices, they disengage. They're just overwhelmed. They definitely don't rush. They don't bid, but they look for discounts. And this is where, when you're pricing fairly, becomes a huge mistake. Fair pricing still doesn't stand out. If you're in the middle of the pack, 100% you don't stand out. You blend in. Blended listings don't sell. They get lost in the jungle. So next size is 700 or 799 square feet. There were 759 units on sale in November. Of those, 28 of them sold. But this category has a little bit of an issue that the other ones don't. This sort of overlaps the smaller 2 bedrooms. Buyers, they don't care about what category you're in. They care about the value. What can they get? What's the most that they get for their dollar? This is where sellers get it wrong the most. They price it based on size. That's incorrect. Buyers price based on alternatives. What else is out there? In the next size category, units from 800 to 899 square feet. 583 listings in this category, but only 109 sales. Just a little bit over 5 months of inventory. Still a buyer's market. Well, these buyers are a little bit more serious because, you're looking for a size that makes sense, but they're also very selective, and they'll compare up and not down. Next size category, from 900 to just under 1 million. This category had 552 listings available for sale, and they only had 86 sales in November. That's over 6 months of inventory. And in this size, buyers start looking up in terms of size. What else can they get that's a little bit bigger and hopefully cheaper than comparable in the 900 square foot range? And here's the surprise I wasn't ready for when I'm looking at the stats. Anything above 1,000 square feet. In this category, I just jumbled them all together. Anything above 1,000 square feet. There's 807 listings. Okay, that seems a little bit normal, but 270 of them sold. That puts us around 3 months of inventory. It is almost a seller's market. Anything at 4 months of inventory is a balanced market. We're at about 3 months in this category. So what's happening? This segment is the healthiest part of the condo market. One of the things is because larger units don't have a lot of substitutes. Buyers that need space, either you have a small family or you need 2 offices at home, you need a certain size. And because there's limited options, it sort of preserves this pricing. It looks like size matters a lot for buyers. But what does this all mean? How does it affect you if you want to sell a condo? If you price based on the sales activity of your building, you're already behind, because buyers are just not shopping buildings. They're shopping for price, value. They're shopping choices. And they're asking, when they're looking at the market, what can I buy with my money? What else can I buy? But here's a pricing strategy that still works. You have to price below your substitute, not next to them. You need to look at all the other units that a buyer is going to look at when they're looking at your price point. Same neighborhood, same size range, same monthly cost, because we're going to talk about carrying costs as well. Because some of the older buildings have great sizes, but their maintenance fees are well over $1 a square foot. Some of them are even like $1.5 to $2 a square foot, which is insane. And you have to be more aggressive than your options. Remember, in this market, fair pricing means invisible. Aggressive pricing creates urgency, and urgency is the only thing that still sell condos right now. And this is why condo owners feel trapped. They can't sell without paying. They can't rent without bleeding, and they can't wait forever. But understanding this market gives you control, and control starts with pricing reality. If you want more breakdowns like this, subscribe and like this video. Thanks again for watching. See you soon.